Rather than thinking about how do I get a job, you might want to think about how can I meet people and test drive experiences that help me discover what I'm passionate about. Hi, I'm Professor Steve Gedeon from one of the largest entrepreneurship programs in the world at the Ted Rogers School of Management at Ryerson University in Toronto, Canada. But today, I'm coming from Munich, Germany, at the Creative Hall at the Straschek Center for Entrepreneurship at the Hochschule für angewandte Wissenschaften, the University of Applied Sciences, Munich. Every year we bring 15 students from Ryerson University to participate at the APE Boot Camp, which is an international design thinking boot camp. And in today's course, I'm going to be giving you an overview of the basic design thinking diamond process. Previously, we talked about the difference between planning and searching. In planning, you use causal-based reasoning to achieve known goals in a stable environment, kind of like farming. In the search-based side of things, it's really more like hunting, where you don't know what you're going to find and you have to use different methods to discover what the future can hold. We talked about in a planning-based mindset, you know what the goal is and you choose your means to achieve that goal, whereas in a search or effectuation-based methodology, you know what your means are, you know what you have at your disposal, and you pick a direction. So we're taking that step a bit further today with the second major entrepreneurship principle, which is the basic design thinking diamond pattern. I'm going to strongly urge you to watch the 4-part series that I posted, which is from the Straschek Center for Entrepreneurship. It's a very nice professionally made video at the Straschek Center on entrepreneurship, opportunity spotting, and 2 episodes on design thinking. These are good high quality videos. I'd like to suggest that those will augment what I'm going to talk about here today. The basic design thinking pattern starts with divergent thinking, that you want to get lots of data from outside of you, to gather this data and experiment and get out of the building. You want to turn these insights or this data into Postit Notes, and you want to seek extreme users, non-users, you're looking for workarounds, you're looking for surprises and contradictions, you're asking other people for stories. If you're trying to understand a design challenge related to you, it's important you get out of your own head and you seek information from outside. It could be personality tests and other things like that, or it could be asking your friends and neighbors what they think about you. Don't forget to ask for stories, and when you ask someone a question, shut up and listen to them and quietly let them finish the story. There's a variety of other tools and techniques that people can use during the divergent thinking phase, such as interviewing, brainstorming, but the basic idea is you're expanding the range of choices and you're kind of confusing yourself. That's why you need to create a lot of Postit notes with good visualization techniques to capture this information. Then you use convergent thinking techniques to identify patterns and to analyze all that data in order to discover insights. You use these visualization techniques to identify patterns. You move the Postit notes around. You cluster things that are similar to each other, and then you separate things that are far away from each other. So you might get a lot of data from a variety of sources and then say, well, these 4 or 5 things seem similar, but these 8 or 9 things are similar to each other but different than the other. So I can physically separate them using distance, and I can also use different color Postit notes, different style or color pens and things like that to be able to identify patterns. You can use 2x2 matrices to say, well, what's important maybe versus what's easy to do, or what's important to me versus what's important to other people, or what's in harmony with my beliefs versus what is something that other people think I should do. Use these 2x2 matrices to identify patterns. You can use what are called journey maps, and you can also just do simple selection criteria to reduce or eliminate some of the data that maybe you're less interested in. Again, the basic pattern is divergent thinking or convergent thinking, and you need to make sure you know which of the two you're doing. When you're doing divergent thinking, you have to let the ideas flow, and you never say no to ideas during a brainstorming session. And it's only during the convergent thinking phase that you're able to go, yeah, but, or I'm not so sure if I like this one. So you have to be clear on whether you're doing divergent or convergent thinking. So here's that reason for calling it the diamond pattern, is the combination of divergent, convergent thinking. So don't focus so much on the step-by-step use of the tools as much as you want to make sure that you keep the principles in mind. Again, this step-by-step approach that people like to use, or that students often fall for in terms of do tool 1, then do tool 2, then do tool 3, that's a planning-based mindset. You want to keep the principles in mind even when you're following what might appear to be a step-by-step approach. So in this course, for example, I might have to just chronologically tell you, do this, then this, then this. But you have to, in addition to doing the step-by-step approach, keep the principles in mind. So I'm going to be talking about the principles right now. The first principle is make sure you start with good questions. A lot of questions are so vague that you don't start from a narrow point, you start from such a broad point that if you start from too broad of a point and then diverge from there, you get lost very quickly, very easily. So you want to start from a good question. Designers love good questions. So asking a question like, what job makes me happy? Or how do I find a job? Or how do I find more time? Or should I go to grad school or take a year off after graduation? Those aren't particularly good questions. You want to narrow that question down. So a better question to start this might be something like, how do I find a job that combines my love for fashion and social media while allowing me to travel? So you can see that it's a much more well-defined question that points you in a certain direction rather than being so broad that you get confused from the very beginning. Secondly, while you go through this series of divergent, convergent thinking, you want to use good visualization. Basically, you want to make sure you use a lot of different Postit notes. So as we can see in this creative hall at the Strashik Center around me, people are using a lot of different Postit notes. This is an example of what the work environment looks at one of these events. This is an event we ran at the Digital Media Zone here at Ryerson University, and you can see that these students have several different large boards that they're putting their Postit notes on, but also it's kind of messy. You see they've got food laying all over the place, coffee cups and bags of tools and things that they can play with and use. That's a good way to make sure you're getting a lot of data, the raw material that you're starting with. Here's another example that some students have compiled from the APE bootcamp at the Strashik Center. This is from the most recent one, actually, in March of 2020. This is probably the last international event before the COVID-19 emergency happened. I flew back from this on March the 14th, I think, after the lockdown had already happened. So people were starting to already get nervous about what's this COVID thing that we're hearing about. Here's another example of use of Postit notes, but as you can see from this one, actually you can't read what these Postit notes say, and they're not really put in any kind of a pattern. Certainly there was the first stage of taking some notes, but then putting like the blue notes are kind of like summaries or identifying labels for clusters, but these haven't been assembled into a 2x2 matrix yet. Here's an example of use of a customer profile canvas, which identifies jobs, gains, and pains, where the student has created a lot of Postit notes, prioritized which ones were important, and then taken them off of that prioritized list and said, these are the most important jobs that I'm looking to accomplish, or these are the most important gains or pains. So this is a good use of visualization to condense what you've created and assemble it into some kind of an order. Here's another example of something I did over the Christmas holidays, actually. Because it was 2020 and I wanted to start thinking about long range, like maybe decade-long goals versus short-term, this semester goals. This particular one shows level of importance to me on the y-axis versus duration, whether it's short-term on the left versus long-term on the right. So the pink ones are goals related to my wife. So in the near term, very important are things like having a great Christmas and lots of presents and things like that. Whereas in the long term, highest priority is a long-term loving relationship with my wife. The blue ones are different goals I have related to Ryerson University. The orange ones are things more related to fun or play or health or things like that. And what I did originally was just kind of a brain dump of here's all the things that are in my head of bucket list goals and other things. And then I assembled them into how important are these versus how long term or short term are these. And obviously this would change over time, that as I accomplish some of the goals, they might come off. And then sometimes I'll say, I thought this was more important to me. I'm moving that to a lower importance, or I'm pushing that off into the future. Or, gee, I didn't think I'd get around to this for 3-4 years, but actually I'm going to prioritize this and put this maybe within the next few months. So this is a good way to visualize what's important in your life and when you might want to be accomplishing some of these goals. You want to make sure at the end of this diamond, at the end of the divergent convergent thinking phase, that you've made good insights and discoveries, that you don't start with one goal and kind of go off in a different direction, or that you say, well, I didn't really discover anything interesting. So you want to make sure you capture these insights. An example in my life might be, well, I say that health is important to me. I give it a high priority. But for some reason, I never actually prioritize it or do what I say I'm going to do. Why is that? How can I use that to start a new diamond of divergent convergent thinking? Or something else like, I say admin isn't important to me, but boy, I spend a lot of time working on admin, even though I hate it and don't like it, and these are all pretty low priority, low important things. Why do I spend so much time doing this? What's going on with that? How can I fix that? So that's an insight into my own character going through this particular diamond. But a similar thing would happen as you're going through a career or job search or side hustle or social entrepreneurship thing, that you discover, I say I'm really interested in fashion, but I actually don't like to shop. Or I say I'm really interested in fashion, but I really hate spending the time and the effort to read through the books and famous people and the influencers. So what is it? What is it about fashion that's so important to me? That's an interesting thing. Let me go back and iterate and do that diamond all over again. You also want to make sure that you're making good progress. That if you start with a question like, how do I get a good job? You collect a bunch of data, you do divergent convergent thinking, then you end with, well, I'm still looking for a job. You haven't really made progress. So you need to compare the end point to the beginning point and make sure that that delta between A and B, that you're achieving progress. If you're not progressing, go back and start over again, maybe with a different design question. Finally, you want to make sure that when you get to the end of that diamond, that you've created a good question that drives the next divergent thinking phase. Often you want to start with something like, how might we ... So it could be, how might I build better habits around health? Or how might I build the habit of prioritizing getting at least 4 solid exercises in a week? Or something like that. If your starting point condition is something like, how do I find a job? That really is not giving you a good career-based thinking. Rather than thinking about how do I get a job, you might want to think about how can I meet people and test drive experiences that help me discover what I'm passionate about, or gives me energy, or how might I discover the things that make me excited to get out of bed. I find it difficult to get started in the morning. What might be a way for me to get excited? How might I accumulate the experiences that help me discover what gets me excited to get out of bed in the morning? This changes your mindset from how do I get this thing at the end, the goal, to how do I focus more on the process or the experience or the adventure. Rather than saying, how do I get a large number of employers, because I know I've got a lousy rate of success, probably only 1 out of 20 at best. Rather than focusing on how do I get a large number of jobs, think about how do I accumulate the skills and the experience that would make me a desirable coworker in the industry that I'm excited about. Again, this is removing the emphasis on the goal and focusing more on the journey, on the entrepreneurial adventure, the discovery that you're going through. So we're going to have a variety of assignments based on this design diamond principle. First is talking about what is your design challenge? How do you make good design challenges? How do you create and manipulate Postit Notes to identify patterns by clustering and separating and relabeling and using a variety of different 2x2 matrices to seek patterns and gain insights? You've already been accumulating some information in the bird in the hand principle in the last module, but you want to capture this information from the personality tests or your personal interests or your values and beliefs. You want to capture these and identify which ones are in harmony with the kind of career that you might be interested in. We'll have assignments related to how do you refine your design challenge by integrating these various insights. We'll talk about how to use the point of view tool from the Stanford D School, which includes the information about the user, the need, and some insight. We'll talk about use of the customer persona canvas, which comes out of value proposition design, one of the standard textbooks in entrepreneurial thinking. And we'll also be asking you to create 3 different design challenges around either a startup opportunity or else maybe an entrepreneurship type opportunity like getting a job or identifying a side hustle or a self-employment opportunity or social change making. I'm also going to ask you to do a design challenge around balance in your life as well as character. And these both come from the bird in the hand principle. So today you learned the basic design thinking diamond. You learned about divergent and convergent thinking tools. We talked about the importance of having good questions at the start, good visualization during the process, good insights at the end, making good progress from A to B or a good delta from getting from A to B. We also talked about having a good start for the next diamond to stimulate the next round of divergent thinking. Finally, we talked about some of the assignments that you'll be working on during the design diamond. Remember, entrepreneurship is like learning how to play the guitar. Be sure to crank it up to 11.